Hello and welcome to the Greater STL Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet the podcast at Gstlsp. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. You can find us anywhere, Facebook, YouTube, anywhere. I'm talking about anywhere now. I was on a website earlier that hadn't updated, and it's updated. So look up the Greater STL Sports Podcast. You can find us on Apple, Google, all of it. Trying to get the YouTube going, trying to do some things there. I'm slow, but doing some things. We're back. We missed a week. Had a little bit of a rough week. Doing a lot of working, which isn't my favorite thing to do. But just a lot of stuff going on in the personal life, and with me, I have two different things I call life. I call it life, and then I call it real life. And, life to me is just, going to work and just living. You know, going to work, doing your thing, getting a paycheck, paying your bills. That's life to me. That's things that you have to do. You're gonna do. Now, real life is when you have to deal with, the big stuff. Whatever that may be. To me, working is life. But if I got fired from my job, I would call that life. But the next day, I would call real life. That's when you gotta start. You gotta figure out something you gotta do. So we missed the week. I'm slacking because I'm extremely exhausted. Sleep has not been, my favorite thing of the last 2 weeks. And, I don't know if sleep's my favorite thing anyways. I'm not the biggest, person. I hate that I can't, fall asleep, within 10 minutes like people. Or one day I could sleep through a tornado, and the next day I couldn't sleep through a pin drop. It's, one of the most annoying things in the world. But life is life. And real life is real life. I guess I got a new saying now. I guess I can say real life is real life. But things happen, and that's just the way it's... Just things happen, man. You know what I'm saying? I guess someone still... That should be everybody's motto. Things happen. But so we're getting back to it this week. We're going to keep going at it. Try to go at it every week. I got a lot going on, so... I wanted to get it going every the same day and all that, but, at least it's going to go up this week. It's most likely going to go up just later in the week next week, and then probably the same way the week after that. And then we'll get back on track. I got some free time, and then 2 weeks after that. But Greater STL Sports Podcast, look it up. Apple, Google, anywhere you listen to podcasts. I have a non-podcast related app on my phone. It's just a podcast generator, and it comes right up on there. Subscribe, do all that. Go like the Facebook page. Go like the group page. I guess we can use both of the same thing, but I was actually just trying to control stuff. But anyways, that's just how he rolls. Now, I said I wasn't going to talk about a goalie controversy on this podcast. 2 weeks, I think 2 podcasts ago. I guess that's 3 weeks ago at this point. And then I came on the podcast and said, I don't really want to talk about a goalie controversy. Just play Husso at home. Well, now you got to talk about a goalie controversy. And it's just great. It's just because of how great Husso has been in goal. And he was the second star of the week. 3-0, 134 goals against with a 960 save. And it's the second that you heard that the Blues had to go play out in Calgary and lose 7-1. And the problem with that game is Jordan Binnington started. And I think I'm going to keep reiterating this because people just don't get it. I understand playing a hot hand, and I understand all that. And there's actually some very interesting information on how Husso plays. One season he's good, and one season he's not. Someone said actually on Twitter that we actually need to get rid of him. This is the time to get rid of him. And if you actually look at them stats, you can kind of see that. Now, this, with the COVID and everything that's going on, it's kind of funny of how things have to work out. You kind of need them 2 goalies. You kind of need another guy like Charlie Lingland down in the minors. Another guy that can get it done. Definitely with your salary cap situation, he's the only one that fits the salary cap. You also get Hoffa down there and blah, blah, blah. But I don't think that you can even create a goalie controversy in something like this. Now, I know that Houston's played great, and he should be the starter. He should be the number one and all that. Great, great, great. Just keep pouring stats at me and keep saying, oh, Bennington's played so horrible and all that. Great. That's awesome. I'm glad about your opinion. Like, I really don't know, like, how many of these people are actually, like, that sit there and, like, watch the games. I can watch a game and look at the score and just say, hey, this is how it worked. Bennington's horrible. Like, I know how many people watch a game and just see it for the runs or the goals or the touchdowns or the baskets. But usually when them situations happen, there's a breakdown somewhere. And since I restarted the podcast and everything, I've been saying that this defense plays horrible in front of Bennington. I mean, you literally, in the game the other night, had Bertuzzo literally under Bennington. And there's people still saying, oh, he had a shot to save that. What? I mean, you literally have your player take you out. And then people saying you should be able to make that save. And I'm not going to say that Bennington hasn't allowed horrible goals this season. I've said it, that I think that his cockiness has gotten a little too high for even him, to where he's going to go out there and look bad sometimes, trying to make the big play and miss the easy ones. I'm like, oh, I can reach out there and get that. Oh, I got this before. Look at me now. Look, I can do it again. No problem. But this defense has played horrible. I mean, extremely, ridiculously horrible in front of Bennington. I mean, Parayko went from a guy that you're like, man, if he can just step it up that one level on defense, he could be the best in the league. And he looks like the worst defender I've ever seen in my life. He's not that big. And what I've never understood is, like, we get rid of these big physical players, the Backuses of the world, which at the time I understand letting Backus go. But Pietrangelo was the better choice over Parayko, and I think everybody knew that. And I'm not the biggest fan of Pietrangelo, because I kind of think that he gives up. But he can play defense as a defenseman. Parayko can't. He's always moving forward, which is the worst thing a defenseman can always be doing. How many times have you seen somebody just pass him like it's nothing and get a wide open net? I mean, how many breakaways have the Blues allowed this season? It is ridiculous how many times it. I mean, it's not just 3-on-3. I mean, I can understand the 3-on-3s. I think the Blues at the beginning of the season had like a 3-on-0 that they ended up scoring on. So I understand them, but it's 5-on-5. And it's not just 5-on-5. It's on the when they're on the power play. It's on when they're on the penalty kill, which is almost a little bit understandable. One less player. If you're moving forward to go in the offensive zone and you get one bad pass or one lucky hit of the stick, and the puck's going the other way into your zone, and if you can't stop the guy, you can't stop the guy. But he's not a guy that gets in front of pucks. He's not a guy that can go and bury somebody into the boards, hold a guy against them. He's not a physical specimen at all. And it almost makes the Blues look bad because you can't get nobody to go out there and replace what you pay him. You're not going to sit Parayko for some guy you go trade for. You're not going to sit Parayko for anybody under him other than maybe Falk or Krug. You're not going to do it for Michael A. You're not going to do it for Bertuzzo. So you put yourself in a rock and a hard place with your defense. And you really essentially have to have spectacular goalie play to even have a chance. And that's how it's really been for the last few years. And it's just gradually gotten worse. And the Blues keep adding these players that have the same skill set. A Krug and a Falk are the same player, essentially. You add a Falk for the penalty, for the power play. Because he's one of the best in the league, which is understandable because you want a defenseman to go out there and get you more goals when you needed them. But after that, he's not a guy that can get back to somebody on defense. Krug's an offensive player. You're left with Michael and Bertuzzo. That's it for your guys that can actually play decent defense. And Michael's not this big, strong guy either. And I think that Parayko knows that you have nobody out there to protect him for him to be able to go and maybe take this next step up as more of a grinder defensively. Because if he's got to go out there and make this check and someone comes after him, who's going to save him from that? Who do you trust on this team? Who do you, number one, who would, at this point during COVID and all this, who would you want to get hurt? And you can say, oh, the Nathan Walkers, and we got the Dakota Joshuas, and all that James Neal stuff floating around somewhere. So we got guys to replace them, but when you have a team that's hot like this, you kind of don't want to keep messing with the lineups. And maybe trying something different. But I just don't know. I mean, the Clausen thing is still crazy to me how they've just kind of babied him for, I don't know, it seems like 5 years now. And he's down there on the fourth line. And he's kind of just floating around here. There's Clausen. Hey, Clausen's got the puck. He's going to pass it off. There goes the line change. And usually that's the fourth line is going to have Parayko out there and Krug out there, the number one defensive line. So there's your chance for maybe the best protection possible. But the Blues aren't playing a gritty game with any line. So it's always offensive all the time. So I don't even think Parayko is in the state of mind to even think about playing defense. And I don't think he was ever of that mindset. And it really looks like one of the worst moves that Doug Armstrong's ever made by letting Pietrangelo go. And at the time, I was not saying that at all. I'm saying if he's going to get this big, crazy, unbelievable, amazing contract, then let him go. Keep Parayko because it looks like he's going to be the next guy up. Go out there and spend that money that you were going to spend on Pietrangelo and try to upgrade this team. Which they did, which they have with Bunashev with number 89. Which they tried with the trade with Sammy Baez and then signing him. And then also Sammy Baez. Yes, I actually said that right. And then going out there and getting Falk and going out there and getting Krug when you knew you were going to lose Pietrangelo. I mean, they've spent their money the right way to what they thought that they needed at the time, but you've done overcompensated so much for something that you thought you didn't have that you might be ruining your number one goaltender who gets paid the money to be your number one goaltender for a pretty long time. And I think that's why the Blues were never talking about this crazy goalie controversy that everybody was talking about, that I thought was nuts. That's no longer nuts. And that's only a testament to how Huso has played. Because if he had one bad game on this stretch, like the 7-1 game that Bennington just had, you probably would have been like, all right, he came back. The backup goalie came back down to earth. But he hasn't had that kind of game all season long, which is crazy to even think about because last year, every time they had Huso injured, it's like, oh man, well, here's at least one goal to start off in the first 5 minutes. So you almost felt like you were always coming down from behind. You were always trying to make a comeback in his games, and now the Blues almost seem more confident when he's in there, definitely in offense. The problem is it seems like the defense plays so much better in front of him. And I was reading some stats earlier where it was like a 12-point difference, and I think there was only one goalie below Bennington in an expected save percentage. And his was 12 points lower than Huso. Which is crazy to think about that it could be that much of a difference, but then to think that both your goalies in there, Bennington at 2 and Huso's at 10. That's how good a goal play you got this season. And I'm not going to blame this on the defense. I'm going to blame 95% of it on the defense. But I've also thinking that Jordan's gotten too cocky. I think that the Blues kind of led him with the 2019 he had in the beginning of 2020. I think they kind of said, hey, we're just going to let him go. Like, when we let this guy go, look how good he's actually been. And now you've seen a little bit in the last season, and now it's gone off the wall in this season with him going after people and him trying to make saves that are easily made if he would just move a little bit, but he's trying to, I'm guessing he's trying to make the save to put his guys into a better offensive position. Or maybe he thinks that if he made the save this way, he's going to knock off he's going to knock into a rebound, and he ain't got a good enough defense to play for the defense to get the puck. He's going to get scored on because he's not Spider-Man. He can't just go from side to side. I really don't know, but it just seems like I don't think that he's dropped a level. I just think that the Blues put too much on him at one time as, hey, you have to be this guy. You have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to be that Jordan Bennington that you were 2 years ago. And it doesn't, and I'm not just going to just blame this on all the defensemen because it seems like guys like O'Reilly has kind of lost a step defensively. You've had the COVID-19 of the world, which all of a sudden everybody I think football just gave up on it. You're not hearing nothing about COVID in football anymore. But hockey, it seems like 10 people got COVID every day. College basketball is starting to come up on them like that too. So I can understand being hit hard by COVID and all that and blah, blah, blah. But it's not like the Blues were all that bad when that happened. And it's not like it's all that bad right now. Hey, Huso wins 2 and Bennington wins 1. 2 out of 3 is a pretty good way to go. And it's always, what you see last. That's what's always going to be in everybody's eyes. You see something hot right here, right now, and that's what you want. It's an impulse reaction, is what I call it. Like when you see something on the internet and you're like, man, I've never seen nothing like this. I gotta buy it. It's an impulse buy. That's kind of what Huso is now, is the impulse buy. And I would be on that train if I thought Bennington was really playing that bad. If I thought this was the Jake Allen of last year, or 2019. But he hasn't played. He hasn't been the Jake Allen of 2019. But you're hitting a point in the season with COVID and games being rescheduled and games being moved and postponed and all that, and then you're going to hit your Olympic stretch where they're not going to the Olympics this year, but they're going to still take the break. Where you're going to have 38 games in 79 days, which is essentially a game every day. And that's a hard schedule. Definitely on my grueling sport like hockey. So you're going to need both these guys to play well no matter what. Because it is going to be in every at least 2 out of 3 situation. Or 1-1-1-1. Who's Bennington? Or vice versa. And this was what's so great about this COVID thing is that you know that when you're going to have to scratch a guy, when you're going to have to healthy scratch a Logan Brown or somebody, a Sundquist who just came back, or a Brendan Shen, when you're going to have to scratch them guys just to get them some rest, you now know that you got somebody that come up there and take their spot for a game here and a game there. So it's almost been beneficial to the Blues, for sure. And that's coming from, a hometown guy. I've seen every team and seen what this rookie done, or who they brought up here and who they brought up where. But I know on the Blues what has happened. And it was almost like a perfect storm of scenarios. With all these guys going out at different times and getting to see the Nathan Walkers and Dakota Joshua's and getting Clausen some playing time and letting Kyrou shine. That's something. So now you know that you can go on that stretch with your players. But how's it going to hold up when you get down to these games where you got guys that are tired and not going to be, as fast as they were on offense? You're going to see a lot more guys on their heels. And when they get into the defensive zone, they're not going to be trying to go after a puck and glide to the other zone. They're going to want to get the puck and take their time and take as much time as the rest of they can. You're not going to see a lot of fast pace. You're probably going to see a lot of attempts at dump and run in a lot of set plays. Once you don't hit the dump and run, get the line change, new crew out there. Let's go out there and hit up a set play. So it's crazy to think about that COVID has actually benefited something. But the problem is what it's benefited is not what you need on this team. It's not the end all be all, because the end all be all right now is the defense. And when you're playing a game every other day, you're going to need guys to step up. You're going to need your defense to be there. Whether it's a high-scoring game or not, because you're going to need that last stop in the third period, if it's a 1-0 game or a 5 game. And the Blues haven't shown that they have a player that's going to step up like that all season long. The most potentials come from your young guys. That's who the guys, pretty much are the only guys that you can go out here and trust, it seems like. Because everybody probably thought that Parenko's going to hit that 5th year, and he just hasn't hit it yet. And I still just hate that Bertuzzo has not been mentioned, to get mentioned on that. The one time he messes up, here's Robert Bertuzzo tackling the goalie. That's not a fair assessment of what Robert Bertuzzo has done. Robert Bertuzzo has been the guy that's stepped up for you. Because you essentially have nobody else that can. And I like that you see that not Clausen, Kyrou to go out there and defend himself. But that's not the guy I want doing it. That's not the guy I want taking punches. That's not the guy I want swinging punches. Because if the guy taking punches, if you hurt his head, you give him a concussion, them concussions are going to be crazy. Ask David Perron. who's one of the guys that said we need to play better in front of Bennington. We're one of the O'Reilly, same thing. We've been horrible in front of them. We got to play better in front of them. Yeah, you can't have you can't have your leading scorer getting punched in the head. You can't have him what he needs the most, punching somebody in the face, his hands, and punching somebody and breaking a wrist, which affects his whole game. Yeah, if you take out Bertuzzo 5 minutes out of the game, aren't you kind of scared of what's going to happen? Aren't you kind of scared that you go Franco out there and it's 2 goals right off the bat because you have no protection now? It's almost like so much was talked about, and it's got to be in the coach's head and Doug Armstrong's head and everybody's heads because it's asked so much by reporters and stuff. Oh, what can you do to make the power play better? Oh, what can you do to make the offense a little better? Blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like they went over there and said, all right, what do you got to say now? And now we're stuck in a position where, like, can we defend? Do we have somebody that can, like, maybe, like, try to block a shot? Maybe not, like, go in the offensive zone all the way and, like, so a guy doesn't pass him and get a breakaway, every, once a period? It sucks to, like, even talk about this, about how good they played. It really does suck. That your one thought about is, man, can this team play defense? Can you keep up this streak you're on by just having an offensive team? Now, it can work for some teams if you have that Sidney Crosby of the world. And maybe you do have that in Kyrou. But Crosby had Malkin. The Vestins had Backstrom and Oshie, and there's always that backup guy. So if Tarasenko doesn't keep up on the stretch season, you don't have the guy. And now maybe you say Tarasenko's that guy. Well, can Kyrou keep up on the stretch season? And I know you're going to say that. You probably said that about Ovechkin, 20 years ago. They probably said that about Crosby. But you kind of put all your A's in one basket. And with how hard you're pushing the salary cap with some of these players, with Falk and Tarasenko and Parenko and Bennington and Krug and all these players with these higher contracts, you kind of put your A's on a basket for a while. To say, hey, this is the team we're going to have to run with. And yeah, we're going to get a guy here and there. And Perunovic is right there. Perunovic has been up. He's on the cusp. He's a guy that I think is a physical player. But, at times can be a little too offensive-minded. But he's a bigger physical player. But he's also an unknown. I mean, he's basically been used because of COVID. Or he wouldn't have probably been up here at all this year. I could see a guy like a Joshua coming up, or a guy like Walker, just to get some healthy scratches. Get some guys some time. Get a Clauston, a young player a day off. Clauston, like I said earlier, a Logan Brown, but also getting the other guys, and O'Reilly, Shen, I said Shane, oh my God, I can't believe I keep doing that. Shen and Bozak. I could see them kind of players coming up. I just couldn't see in my mind, a top draft pick coming up in a situation where he's not needed. And at the point right now, I would say he's needed. And the problem is I just don't know who you take out of the lineup. Mostly because of the way you're playing and because contract situations. So you really don't know what you're going to get. And it's kind of frustrating almost. It's almost like the Cardinals last year when you're like, man, they were so good at one point, and then they sucked. And then now you're like on a 17-game winning streak, and you're like, man, that's how good they could have been. And then they go and lose in the wild card game, and you're like, that's kind of what I figured. I mean, I kind of feel that's the way the Blues season is going. I kind of feel that a first round exit really won't affect me because I said, man, I seen that back in January. And it's whatever, April, May, or whenever they go to the playoffs. I think April. I had that written down last week. I think April 20th or something is the last game, April 19th. Yeah, but if they're done before, if they're done the first week of May, I'm going to be like, that's pretty much what I expected. Because you figure once you get to the playoffs, you're going to play the best teams. At a time where everybody's going hard and everybody's trying to get to where they fought for. Because the regular season in hockey essentially doesn't matter because half the teams go to the playoffs. More than half the teams. I think it's right at half the teams. So kind of like in base, and that's why you hear now in basketball with the people sitting out and, I forgot what it's called. But basically sitting out just to keep the legs fresh for the playoffs. It's talked about with LeBron all the time, which is funny to hear because Michael at 40 years old. Let's say we're in a playoff push, and they were were the Wizards really going to get the playoff? But he played 82 games at 40 years old. Whether he started them all or not is a different subject. But 40, and then you got LeBron out here managing his minutes. Tells you the greatest is. Nice to switch off subjects there too. But the Blues are at a point where you can't do nothing now. You have to roll with this. And as a fan, I just want to go out there and say, hey, man, I know we got a chance. And I'm not saying that we don't. But I think it's more of a coin flip than I thought it was even 2-3 weeks ago. Because I just can't see that Husso's going to also stay on this Jordan Binnington run. And people say, well, they always thought he was a better goalie. He was the one getting call-ups. He was the one ahead of Binnington in Chicago and wherever else, San Antonio, wherever else. The Blues have played 29 different minor league teams in the last 3 years. And they're like, well, but he would have been the guy at that time too. Because he's been given his shots. And could this have been a minutes management thing for him, where they say that they kept him fresh, and now the fresher goalie is looking like the fresher goalie is looking like the better goalie. And then it gets to a point where maybe they start figuring him out. Maybe his minutes finally start getting to him. Not used to being out there for 60 minutes 2 to 3 times a week because that's not the way that he's played all season. And it gets to a point where you're like, oh yeah, that Jordan Binnington guy, yeah, let's go ahead and start getting him in here again. And the only thing you can hope about this is that this is all a wake-up call for Binnington to be like, all right, I played it my way all season long. I had some fun. I swung some sticks at some guys' heads. I tried to go out there and, throw some punches. I tried to be the big tough goalie guy. Now it's time to get that all in my head and go out here and play hockey the way that I've played for the last 2.5 seasons. And really, I guess it's only 1.5, and really, essentially, it's only one full season if you really think of it. I guess we're getting to 1.5. But the way I've played since January 2020, hey, let's get all this, I got my contract, I got my money already. Now let's go show them why I have this. Because with the way money's floating around, you had to do this. But you didn't want it to look to where it's like, hey, we're going to start this guy that's making $500K and the guy that's making $6 million is going to have to sit on the bench because it's the guy you never wanted this at this point, which is a great problem to have, definitely, with all the games you got to play down the stretch. But the problem isn't just looking for 2022. It's 2022, 2023, 2024, and so on. And it just irritates me that I even have to talk about this. I really don't want to. It's just happened. It's because it's not like someone said, "Hey, who's going to be better?" He's just played that much better. And you know that Bennington's not going to get his rematch against Calgary in his home-and-home series, but you hope that the next time Bennington comes out there, he's the guy that you've seen win the Stanley Cup. You hope he's that guy. But it could also be 2019 where Husso's holding the cup over his head, too. You know, he's a third goalie or some crap. I can hold the cup over my head being a third goalie, too. But don't be surprised if the Blues are out in the first round of the playoffs. It just feels like one of them inevitable things. It just feels like one of them inevitable Blue seasons. Like every single year before 2019. Now, I wanted to get on with some baseball talk. And I didn't know if I wanted to go CBA or if I wanted to go to the Hall of Fame. And it's kind of debatable. To me, the Hall of Fame, and I'm going to start with Hall of Fame. But to me, the Hall of Fame, the way it's set up, the way they do everything, I understand having the writers vote. Now, this is what irritates me a little bit, is that you're having writers vote they're not national writers. They're local sports writers. They're writing about players that they see every day. So like when you go look at the numbers, there's guys out there that you're like, he got Hall of Fame votes? And that's because a guy that wrote for that paper was like, man, that guy was a really good player. I really like that player. It'd be like me writing for the Cardinals, I guess 2004. So from 1990 to 2000 and let's just say 2010, and every year vote for Ray Lakeford. Because to me, that's a guy that maybe should have garnered some votes, and I never looked at how many. He probably got 0. But that's just what I'm saying. And I don't know a good way to fix it. I don't know if a committee is the good way to fix it, because you're getting a committee made together of guys that coach some of these players. So if a Russo's on that committee, he's going to say, well, a guy like Big Mac should be in, or a guy that I've seen like a Scott Rowland should be in. Which, don't sit here and say now, before we even get in this whole conversation. Oh, he just said like a guy like Scott Rowland should be in. Didn't say he should. So this is in that right there. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you're going to base it off of things like that, how you feel about how the guy lived his life or whatever should be just totally out of the question. The Hall of Fame for a sport should be what the guy did on the field. And the funny thing about it is, it was just fine when it was these guys who say it helped them doing the amphetamines. It was fine with the guys with the spitballers. It was fine with the guys that were racist and kept the black player. It was fine for then. Then all of a sudden, we get this little era where we're like, baseball's back. After the strike in 94, look at this. Wow, we're going crazy. Look at all the newspaper articles. Look at everything we can write about this. It was fine all then, and then 20 years later, all of a sudden, we're like, well, that guy was kind of a dig. And we heard he did steroids. So, hey, you know what? I'm not going to vote for him. But this guy that, well, he was really nice to me. And we heard he did steroids, but you know what? We don't know about him either, if he did them or not. But I liked him a lot. I'm going to vote for him. If you're telling me that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens should not be in the Hall of Fame over David Ortiz, you're nuts. You're absolutely crazy, unspeakably nuts. Nuts. Roger Clemens was out here throwing 2 ERA baseball at 39 years old, 40 years old. Giving his team chances to win World Series at this age. I'm not saying that it was all him. I mean, Houston had great teams. The Yankees always have good teams. But he wasn't just doing it at 40. He had been doing it since he was 20. And never stopped. You're telling me a guy, Barry Bonds, major league leader in home runs, a guy that people walked with the bases loaded at one point. I don't care how many steroids he was doing. You ain't never seen Mark McGwire get walked with the bases loaded, hitting 70. The hand-eye coordination this cat had. And not only that, in his early years, the guy could run. He was hitting for power. Not 73, which is crazy off the wall. But a guy to go out there and steal bases. A guy that could give you a decent day out in left field. A guy that took walks. A guy that didn't strike out. A guy that hit for average. A guy that won MVPs before he looked like he was on steroids. He's not in the Hall of Fame. But this guy was a DH that couldn't play a lick of first base if his life depended on it. Wasn't very good in Minnesota. And then all of a sudden, just because he's a nice guy, and these PEDs, even though he's on this Mitchell report, and that's what we're claiming, that's what our thing is. That's our standard. That's our golden standard for steroids. Is this little rinky-dink investigation where they interviewed all these people that said multiple names, and a lot of these names have said, yeah, you caught me. I have to, because they had to do the interview because they worked with MLB. Get it, got it, great. But, so we're using this gold standard, right? And these guys and this guy, Brian McAfee, or McAmee, or whoever the hell he is, says, oh, Roger Clemens did it. And Andy Pettit says, I'm pretty sure Roger Clemens did it. Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds both win their court cases. Never once implicated, never once in there did they ever once say that in the court cases that they did steroids. Because they fought it and they were dicks about it, they're not Hall of Famers. Again, I said this earlier. In the Blues thing, what? So that's our gold standard. David Ortiz is on this gold standard report. Now I read Rob Manfred's statement, who was completely, totally just off the wall, just one of the nuttiest people in the world. Who I thought was one of the best commissioners. I thought, this guy's great. Trying to build the game, trying to do whatever he can. Throw it on YouTube, throw it on Facebook, whatever you can do. Try to build the game any way you can. To the CBA thing, and then what he says about Ortiz, well, just because he was on the list doesn't, you don't know what he tested for. Which supposedly was something that's not really banned. I think he said it was some health nutrient thing that he took. Blah, blah, blah. But he's on this gold standard report. He's there. He's the guy that, he's on this list. That I've never heard Barry Bonds' name on. That I never heard Roger Clemens' name on. But I've heard David Ortiz is on this list. That was the standard for the Mitchell report. Yeah, because he's a nice guy. And even though he never admitted it either. But because he's like, I'm not going to fight this. I really don't care. I'm just going to play the game. Because nothing's going to happen to me. Whether I don't pass the test or not. What can George Mitchell... If George Mitchell don't prove me wrong, nothing's going to happen. Like what happened to all these players that got proved wrong and got suspended for whatever many games they came up with. Some of them were 8, some of them were 50, some of them were 1 billion. whoever they felt like suspended. And, I don't understand how an arbitrator could say, oh, this guy was suspended for 50, but he's only suspended for this. But this guy was suspended for 50, but he should be suspended, 3 games more. And it makes 0 sense. But anyways. Because he knew if he said nothing, and he knew that he could get to play long enough, which I think in the long run Bonds and Clemens were pretty much out of the game by then. But because he said nothing and he was still in the game and he's not going to get punished, he just went out there and played. Ignored it. Act like it never happened. So he's the Hall of Famer. Not the guys that just dominated the league as position players. But the DH guy with the big smile on his face. And I'm not saying that David Ortiz ain't a Hall of Famer. But are you telling me that over Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds he's a Hall of Famer? Let's do it deeper down. Over Scott Rowland and Jim Edmonds, who, hometown guy, gonna go with the hometown guy. But are you saying he's a Hall of Famer over guys that played two to three, really, essentially, most prominent positions on the field? And played them to the top of their level, but also went out here and hit 300 plus home runs? I mean, Mike Schmidt's the only third baseman that has better stats than Scott Rowland. And there's other guys. Andrew Jones. I think Andrew Jones is a better player than David Ortiz. Now, I don't know. I was reading an article today that was talking about Kenny Lofton. Craziness. The bad thing about this all is if you keep going over the next 3 or 4 ballots, this is probably going to be your last guy that gets in the Hall of Fame by the 75% vote. And maybe Rowland gets it next year. Maybe because there's just nobody on the ballots. Carlos Beltran, you can make an argument for him. But was Carlos Beltran better than Jim Edmonds? And then I just said Andrew Jones. You can make an argument there. Was Andrew Jones better than Carlos Beltran? Now, if you go back and you base it off clutch hitting and everything like that, then you're probably going to go with Carlos Beltran. But it's stupid to punish a guy like say, oh, we don't have this great class, but we got so much this year to vote on that we know Scott Rowland's going to get it next year. So let's get him enough votes to get him in to where next year he's probably the only guy going to get in. Because we don't have anybody problem in it. And then we'll see who we got next. And we'll try to get a guy in that year. And if we don't get anybody in. And I'm trying to think down the list. And the next prominent guy, wouldn't you think would be Pujols? I'm just trying to think of guys that have retired recently. And I mean, that's what I came up with. And I'd have to go back and look at it. I mean, Cabrera would be coming up around the same time as Pujols. I mean, it's just hard to think of. I just can't think of anybody off the top of my head that would be proud of it over the next few years. And maybe let's spread it out. Let's make sure we get a guy in every year. Which seems like punishment. And I think that 15 years for 2 of your best players is pretty good punishment for them not to get voted in. So are we saying that, hey, if Roger Clemens just came out and said, you know what, guys, it's all good. You know what, that report's a report. Blah, blah, blah. You guys are the best. I have no problem with you. Things happen. Or came out and said, yeah, I did steroids. Are we saying we would have put him in the Hall of Fame? And I think it was smart a few years ago for Barry Bonds to come back as the hitting coach for the Marlins and try to be like, hey, really I'm a decent guy. I had some bad times, I'm out here trying to win every day. Blah, blah, blah. My fault, you guys. Which he kind of tried to do. He was off and on. Or if he just came out and said, hey, man, you know what? This Anderson guy, he's got the hook. He had the hook up on his stuff that he said can make me better. You know, some rubbish shit. I didn't think nothing about it. I didn't think it was steroids. You know what? It's probably steroids. Are we saying that Barry Bonds would have got in then? They're just making up rules as they go. And it's ridiculous. It's one of the most disrespectful things in the world, I think, to a league. Because, guys, the MLB vote, and it seemed, and we heard it from a football reporter for the MVP vote in the NFL, but the Hall of Fame vote for, and it seems like it's a popularity contest, which I think seems unfair for the guys that actually were just baseball players. Now you could say, hey, you making millions and millions of dollars, bro. Get over it. You know, but some guys are like that. That's not how some people grew up. Some people grew up in sheltered lives, and when they, I really don't want to talk to you every single day. Blah blah blah. Hey, I'll talk to you at the end of the week or whatever. Are we saying if a guy like Scott Rowland wasn't that kind of a dick guy, would he already been a Hall of Famer? If he was one of these, I can't really think of guys that, let's say he was Ricardo Perez, guy that's on ESPN. I mean, this guy's not, but he had the personality of an Ricardo Perez. You'd heard his name more. Then you would see his stats more. Are you saying if Scott Rowland was that guy, he'd be in the Hall of Fame? Because if you're saying that, I mean, it's kind of ludicrous. And I'm not going against people that voted Ortiz in. I'm not doing that at all. Because I say if you look at the stats, hitting-wise, Dave Ortiz is probably a Hall of Famer. Stats-wise. If those are stats, no PEDs, no extracurricular substance or anything like that, then you probably say David Ortiz is a Hall of Famer. My beef is he's not a Hall of Famer over two of the best players in your game. And that's what disappoints me about it. And I just don't know how to fix it. I mean, and it's not like David Ortiz got like a big old percentage of the vote. He only got 77%. You need 75 to get in. So there's still a big chunk change of people that said, nah, I'm good. And if I remember reading, Bonds was up in the 60s, in the high 60s. Clemens was right there. Rowlands was in the 50, I think 52% range. Which could easily be changed next year when there's nobody else to vote for. I seen the graphic earlier. They had Jason. And do you think Jason Worth's that's the nominees for next year? Like Jason Worth, Carlos Beltran's the top that guy. And they were showing Jason Worth and Jared Weaver, I think, was on that list. And you're kind of like, are we really going to talk about these people? Is this how we're going to do this for next year? It's just disappointing because I think Scott Rowland deserved it. But I don't. To me, he didn't deserve it over Bonds or Clemens. So if you're not going to put Bonds and Clemens in, I wouldn't put nobody in. That's where I'm at with it. And I don't know how to fix it, which kind of ticks me off too. Because I can't think of a good way to fix it. Because either you get guys that they've played for, you have to get coaches, maybe former players, so guys they played with or against. They're like, man, this guy had really good stats against me. He's a Hall of Famer. Because he had really good stats against me. You know what I'm saying? Or you get the baseball writers who are they're making a popularity contest. There's just no way to fix it. It's kind of the same thing with the CBA. He's got two entities. You just want money. And that's all it's about. I mean, all you're hearing about is the player salary and this and that, which is understandable. Let the players go out and make their money. And they, you see that, and you don't know if you believe, and that's another problem. Do I believe the guy that's in San Francisco is, maybe how is he getting his information? Or the guy in St. Louis, how is he getting information for some closed door meeting? I don't know how this works. I don't know if there are people in there listening. Like in all these situations, there should be a middle person. Everything in that situation, this CBA should be a vid. Hey, we got our side, we got this side. This is what's in the middle. So we need to put everything in the middle. So hey, the MLB wants $10 million in a player pool for players that are in that are in there before free agency years, and the MLB wants $100 million in there. Well, next offer, let's say MLB goes 20, and let's say the Players Association goes 80. All right, we got a number. Let's go 40 right there. Fair number. All right. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why this can't all easily be handled for the benefit of everything going on right now? Definitely with COVID, but it's you're taking away entertainment from people, and really, after March Madness and all that, it's really the only summer entertainment. And you know the leagues and the commissioners and all that, they always hold their selves at higher regard. Like, oh, we have to do this. We have to make it right by us. Well, the way you're going all about it kind of discredits you in my eyes. And that's what sucks about it. What really sucks, I just want to see baseball. And I'm not all that worried about it right now, but just like all the things are coming out, and there's like, it's just so off the wall. Well, but we'll drop this one thing that I guess we don't care about as the Players Association, about stopping this 6 years. But no, we want this money pool. And then, you'll put $10 million in. Oh, we need $100. Like, come on. Is that really negotiating? It was like just playing stupid so you could go out there and say, hey, well, we offered this. And they came back with $10 million. And that goes both ways. Well, the owners say, oh, well, we're the ones that came up with to put some money in there. Why do we have to give it all up? And I think with a sport like baseball, which is day by day going downhill, and with other sports building, like soccer building up, and I think with gambling, basketball has become a whole different thing, and a game like golf with gambling and people actually starting to learn the game and think it's fun at younger ages. I think when you're in your downward turn like baseball, you kind of just like need to hurry the hell up and get over yourselves a little bit and be like, hey, we got to get this fixed, pretty quick, you guys. Like, let's get this done. Because if you lose fan support, you essentially have nothing because it's also all based off sponsors. So the TVs can't pay you because the TV money can't get you paid because the TV's not getting the money from the sponsors because nobody's watching your game. You're kind of a lost cause. And you're gradually having fans move from your sport to other sports like it's nothing because stupid crap like this that's so easily seen how you can get it right and easily be fixed, and you just refuse to do it. Easily they could go in there and hammer this out. And say, yeah, we can come here. Like, where's your high and where's your low? We need this. We need this. For a sport and it's in its decline, I would kind of give up on that. That's just me, though. All right, we're going to take a break. This is the Greater STL Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Hey, have you ever wanted to start a podcast? I've been trying to get this podcast off the ground for years, and I've used many different apps to record the episode, to get my show to the people, and trying to make money off the podcast. Well, now there's only one real way to do that, and that's Anchor. Anchor is your one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise in your podcast. That means you get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now, reading this ad. I use Anchor for instantly recording my episodes in the app, and I also like the features on it, like bringing people into your show for other opinions and guests. So if you always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. That's anchor.fm/start to join me and all the other podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. Hello and welcome back to the Greater STL Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet the podcast at Gstlsp. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. Now, it's been a long time since I've actually been intrigued in a college basketball game. And I'll never stop, not being intrigued by college basketball. It's just my thing. It's probably not ever having an NBA team here. Never actually getting to go see an NBA game. But, that's a bucket list type thing. But for the first time in probably, 3-4 years, I actually watched 40 minutes of a basketball game. And I was sitting here, I was working on the podcast, messing around on the PlayStation. I was like, oh, Mizzou's playing Auburn, the number one team in the nation. Let me, go ahead and turn this on real quick. And you just think, man, if Mizzou played like this all season, and now actually watching the game, you can see where Mizzou is hurting, and that's definitely with the big man. But if they played like this all season, if they maybe kept it close with Illinois, they maybe kept it kind of close with Kansas, kind of close with Kentucky, that this could be an intriguing team. I'm not saying a tournament team, but moving forward, you'd be like, well, maybe this Konzo Martin thing is working out a little bit more than it is. And Mizzou, it was kind of like what I said earlier, that the Blues, they're going to play some defense. Mizzou plays defense? You're facing the number one team in the nation. At one point, they were up 10. It was early in the game. I think it was 12-2. But at halftime, you have them 31-31. And you end up losing by 1. And you just think, what if they made a free throw here? Oh, what if Nesbitt made that wide open three there? What if Konzo, they call that timeout? Which is all hypothetical things that could happen. In the time I'm talking about the Tigers, I was going to say the Rams for some reason. The Tigers actually got a 3 off a set play off that timeout to put them down 1 to have a chance to win that game late. Just Mizzou couldn't get a rebound. You were out rebounded 23-8 offensive rebounds. 23-8 offensive rebounds. And excuse me, that's actually 25-8. They actually had, Auburn had 25 offensive rebounds, 23 defensive rebounds. You're not going to win basketball games that way. And I think that down the stretch, the referees get a little jumpy. Definitely with the number one team, you got to upset Bruin on your hands. I think the referees also get a little jumpy. And I'm not going to say it wasn't for both teams. I mean, Mizzou got charged late in the second half where the guy was obviously nowhere close to being out of the paint. So I'm not going to complain too much about the referees. I think that towards the end it gets a little ticky-tacky. And I actually like the way Konzo played the end of that game. Because I'm not a big fan of, hey, we got a foul. Let's let them shoot 2 free throws. If they make it, we go down here. Let's go for this 2. We're down 1 again. Let's foul again. They make 2 free throws. Hopefully they miss 1. So maybe we're down 2, then we go try to get this 2. I actually like that he actually took it down and said, hey, let's give our team a chance. Let's get this ball with at the least 5 seconds left and try to go down the court and win the game. The problem is with calling the timeout that he did so late to set up a 3-pointer for Mizzou, that if you get that ball with 5 seconds left, you're traveling the whole way down the court on a play where everybody on your team's collapsing towards the hoop to get a rebound. And so you're going to have to try to set up a play within 5 seconds, make a shot. Hopefully it goes in. Hopefully you get somewhere down the court. I mean, there's a lot of hope going into that one play. The problem is Mizzou has no post presence at all. And the only thing you can look at that game and say is, man, if Mizzou would have got a rebound here. Man, if Mizzou would have got a rebound here. Because they made some big shots. I mean, if Kobe Brown had any type of help at all, any type of help, and the guy that intrigued me, I've never heard of last night, Amari Davis, never heard of this guy. I think he's averaged like 4 points a game. And I understand that he's a point guard type too, but I think you got to put your best 5 on the floor. And I think in an offense where you really don't have anything down in the post, that having 2 ball handlers on the team, not a big thing. Definitely when Kobe Brown is a guy you can set up for shots. And I think it would take a little responsibility off him instead of trying to be the playmaker, he can be the guy that just makes try to set up a playmaker. He can be the playmaker, running off screens and making shots and things like that. But he just has no help at all in general. Like, Amari Davis could turn out to be a nobody, and this could just be one fluke game. But you could say that all year for this team. And that's part of the problem. 25 offensive rebounds last night. So they got a beast down low. And that guy was down there about blocking shots, and he's a little trigger happy, which they can always work on that. I think they said he was 4 for 28 from 3 points on the season. But you stopped, essentially, for a minute there, their best 2 players, and that you let somebody just take over the game. And you couldn't stop them because you have nobody on the team that could stop them. Like, I really like this kid they got for Auburn named Katie Johnson. He just is when it was down time to play, where he was like, I gotta will my team to win, because they have another pretty good guy in Jabari Smith, who just wasn't on last night, averaging 16 points a game, and at one point he was shooting 1 of 13. And KD just took over the game. Not Kevin Durant, people. KD Johnson for Auburn just took over the game. And Mizzou at that point had nobody to stop him. And when he did miss a shot, they couldn't get a rebound. And it's almost a 50-50 thing of who you could place the blame on in this situation. Do you blame it on the players for not being able to go out there and get rebounds? Or do you blame it on Konzo, number one, for that timeout with 37 seconds left? Or he just didn't recruit a big man. And I feel like Konzo is a great recruiter and has found kids that can play on his team. I just don't think he's a guy. I think he's kind of like a guy that goes out there and says, hey, do what you did in high school. And at this point, 3 years in, you got to think that somewhere there, that one of these players, 2 of these players, were trying to be something. And I think Kobe Brown's a good player, and I think that it's stuff for debate what kind of player he can be. But nobody on that team is real explosive. Nobody on that team, you're going to say, can go out there and he's going to hit that big shot. Nobody on Mizzou can say, hey, I'm going to throw this ball down low and this guy's going to go and get me a basket when I need it. You have none of that. And you almost willed yourself to win against the number one team. I mean, even in that, after all that timeout and all that, and after making that three and all that, the little back off and try to get that best. Mizzou almost got that ball at half court on like a little half court trap play. And you can't say nothing too bad about that timeout because at the time it's smart. You're running down low. You're playing the number one team. You know your team's probably antsy coming down the court, like looking up and saying, hey, we're only down 4. Like, we got a chance here. You don't want a bad shot at that point. You call a timeout, you set up a play, you settle your team down, and look what happened. Because who's to say what happened if that play didn't happen? They could have ran up, shot a stupid 3, and the game's over before that last second. Because that was an intense, last at least 10 seconds of that game. Walmart goes on the drive. You got a rebound floating around. The ball goes out of bounds right at the last 0.2 of the game. Time clicks off the clock. End up calling the game over. Looks like that the game was over. But if you're a Mizzou fan, even if you're an Auburn fan, you're like, oh my God, the first time my team's ever been number one. And that ball is just thrown away, and you're like hoping that Mizzou can't get to it. And as a Mizzou fan, you're like, if we could just get this rebound. You see the shot go up. You see him miss it. You're like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh. Like your heart almost drops. And like, I was so mad, I had to put my pen down, put my notebook down, put the PlayStation down for a second, and just thought, man, what if? And then the SEC put on their little post-game show or whatever they had, and they had the worst studio. I don't know who was hosting the SEC network last night, but whoever they had as their analyst guy, former college player, great, all that, wonderful stuff. Put the guys out there that play in the SEC games, blah, blah, blah. Or, they used to be in the SEC and, no, whatever, great. Horrible. Absolutely. The halftime show was absolutely horrible. I actually thought a SLU game was on last night, the game they actually played tonight. I went to go change it to that and was like, oh, I'm a day off. Went back and was just like, I can't believe I have to listen to this. And it's funny how Auburn the broadcast was in general. And you would have thought Mizzou was down by 20 and this, just stayed in the game and made the game look like it's going to be a good game. It was tied 31-31 at halftime. I mean, just to think if you could have kept that game close. To think if you would have beat Auburn, excuse me. Auburn, so you played. If you would have beat Alabama in the game before. Just to think if you would have squeaked out, like just UMKC or something. This would be a much different outlook on the season than like, they're going to be a nobody this year. Because the problem is you don't know what's going to happen next game. And you feel like this is like, oh no, they just were 1 point within Auburn. They're going to lose by 30 the next game. And that's how it feels. And it's a bad position to be in because you've been like that for going on almost 6 years now in Missouri. And I don't know what would have changed last night if they would have won the game. It would have been great to celebrate today. No doubt about it. Actually, I think it's a celebration anyways, just to be in 1 point of that team. But it doesn't really change your outlook on the season. Now you're just kind of playing for fun. And I'll be watching for fun. Now I'm going to be intrigued every time they play a notable team. Like, oh, this could be a fun game. And now that I watch the next game, and I just said they're going to lose by 30, they're going to lose by 30 when I watch. But still, it makes you a little more, I don't know, excited to watch the season. Maybe I wouldn't say excited. A little more makes you feel a little vulnerable, like you have to watch the season now. Because you the one game I've watched all season, all the way through, and they almost won against the number one team with literally no down low presence at all. It kind of shows you the player that Kobe Bryant had to be all season. He is this team. And he showed last night he's got a nice little mid-range jumper. He can go to the hoop. Like, if he just had something else, if he had something that the defense could have to go after. Because at times it almost looked like a Kobe Bryant Magic situation. Or Mike Magic, even Michael Jordan situation. Like, they were going to Kobe Bryant would pass the ball out, and I mean, you didn't have another offensive presence out there with him. I mean, I think the broadcast was saying last night, like, Mizzou to win had to score 70 last night. Because that's the only way they're winning, is when they score. And they didn't have to do that, and they held that team to under 60 last night. It's the number one team in the nation when they've allowed 90 to just about everybody else. I mean, Auburn just that much better than you. And that game looks good on paper, but then if you look at the paper, then you got to go to the game against Alabama before that, and Arkansas before that, and be like, oh, the paper doesn't look as good anymore. And I really didn't want to sit here and tell Mizzou too bad. Because I think that actually that was the best coached game by Cuonzo Martin ever. When he knew he had the mismatches, he put the right players in at the time, Amari Davis, just to see when they know they could and when they didn't have the players that down low in the post to get the rebounds and stuff. When they did get the ball, they kind of ran the offense through Kobe and let him do his thing. And the problem is that with Auburn having all those big men, you had to shoot. And you're just thinking, man, they could have made one more shot. Or did this. Or, just something so little. You felt like it made a big difference. But if you can't score down low and you have to shoot, which that's the college game, it's going a lot more jump shots too, just like the NBA. But this ain't the NBA. So if you don't have multiple ways to score, and it's hard to win like that in the NBA. You just get lucky when you have players like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. When you only have one way of scoring, it's hard to win games. And you almost pulled that game out. Down to, at times, one dimension. And let's say the first time that Auburn has been in this situation in Missouri this year, SLU helped them. Should have won that game early in the year. And SLU, you're in the same spot. And they have a little bit better, different conference. Much less of an elite conference. But just the other day, losing the game to UMass knocks you down from second to fourth in your division. And then you come out and put 90 on the next game. And then you go out and do what you did against George Mason. And Slu's in a lot better position than what Mizzou is, because they actually have two players. But they do need a third. I mean, Yuri Collins has just stepped it up and become one of the better passers in all of the NCAA. And it helps when you got a guy like Gibson Jimerson who's just out there launching threes and scoring at will. The only NBA player that I can see out of the two teams is Gibson Jimerson, because he can hit that 3-point shot. And he's not scared to go down into the paint and try to score buckets down low. He's going to be one of the players that's going to have to embrace a Steve Kerr role. The best person that ever did it, probably. J.J. Redd has got to be up there with Steve Kerr. I'm not going to be able to say his name right now. Steve Kerr is the only one that perfected that 6-man 3-point or die position. And he's considered a freshman, so you don't know what he could grow into. I mean, he's essentially got 3 years under his belt, but according to the website, he's a freshman. So, hey, if he's a freshman, I'm down for it. That's ESPN.com, too. But I was going through the Ken Palm rankings today, just to see where they were at. And then, if you guys don't know what them are, it's just another ranking system that ranks teams by some kind of crazy thing. Algorithm, who knows? Some kind of crazy algorithm that I'm not with, that I'm not hip to. Mizzou 131. We already know they're not making a tournament. Not a big deal. Now Slu's at 73. The highest in the A10 is the number 25 ranked team in the country in the AP in the AP poll, Davidson, and they're 47. A team that Slu had a chance to beat earlier in the year. And you had Francis Okoro step up tonight, and if you get some play like that from him, where he can go out there and get double-doubles, he doesn't have to go out there and get 20-point games, but 20 points and 12 rebounds against George Mason. If he goes out there and has games like that, this could be something that could turn into something. And I'm not just saying this year. Yuri Collins is young. Find out the reason I like him, St. Louis guy, but like him a lot. But they got other players in this team that can be that third guy. Terrence Hargrove, Jordan Nesbitt, Fred Thatch. People that give you a different type of thing. And you're not far from Davidson. In a conference that you're probably not going to get two teams in. And if you can get guys to step up, like Francis did today, like he did today against George Mason, this could be a fun team to watch. I mean, Gibson Jimerson in his last 5 games, 23 points, 57 field goal percentage, 75% from 3. 19 points, 53 field goal, 667 from 3. 23 points, 43 field goal percentage, 40 from 3. 31 points, 64, 70 from 3. And then 28, 55, 54.5 from 3. I mean, if he's hitting like that, then in the spot you're in and in the conference you're in, Sue could easily run the table. Definitely if you got Yuri going out there and getting double-doubles every game, which he's going crazy. I mean, back-to-back 12 assist games with 24 assists in his last 2 games, 3 turnovers. That's it. Now his shooting's been a little off. And Gibson just launching threes without even thinking about it and nail them all the time. I mean, that's going to help the turnover to assist ratio. But he's not just that. I mean, he threw a full court baseball pass to Gibson for a dunk tonight. He can find guys in spots that there's not a lot of people that are going to even pass the ball in those situations. And if you're going to have a guy that can read the court as soon as he gets the ball, I mean, that's something special. Whether it's in college or the pros. Because I don't know what year he's got. I don't think he's a pro type of player. But you don't need that right now. I mean, it would be different if you were in the SEC, if you were at Mizzou. You really don't need that if you're still to make it interesting. And I'm not really out here looking for championships. Because I don't feel like Mizzou and SLU have been in a position for that for a long time. I don't think when Mizzou was one of the top 10 teams in the country, I don't think they were in that position. It was fun to watch. I mean, it's been a long time since Mizzou's had an actual legitimate point guard, and that's what you need in tournament games. And SLU has that in Yuri Collins. He's not a shoot first guy. He's a pass first guy. He's a point guard. And it seems like him and Jim and Gibson's got something going right now, to where they're just in sync with each other. The Yuri knows when, hey, Jimerson's got this right here. Let's just throw the ball to him. Let's watch this three and walk to the other side. And if you got a guy like that that can see the play happen before it's happening, kind of like the quarterbacks in the NFL, then when it gets to the fun of the tournament, when it gets to the fun of March, this team can be a beast. This team could have a chance to go and win the A-10 title. Now, wouldn't it be so much fun if they would just go to the Missouri Valley Conference and they did this down at Scott Trey or the Dome or wherever they play it now? I'm pretty sure it's Scott Trey. I don't think they're playing too much anything in the Dome. Well, they are going to have Royal Rumble there. If they get 70,000 people in that place for a Royal Rumble in St. Louis, does that kind of make us look a little Hoosier? But wouldn't that be fun for SLU, March, have a chance to go in there in the Missouri Valley Conference, maybe go on a good run through the tournament, maybe get in there, get into that first round, make that first round game fun, have a chance to win. Like, wouldn't that be something? And the whole time they stayed right around here. Instead, you're watching them on CBS Sports Network channels, the third, or CBS Sports Network Plus or whatever you gotta watch them on anymore. And they're cool. They're playing in the Nets Stadium or where they were playing before. I don't know exactly if that's where they're playing now, but they were playing in Brooklyn before, and it's kind of like it doesn't have the nostalgia it would. Whether it's a crappy conference or not, because if you win the conference, you're getting in. And at that point, that's where the A-10 is. I mean, the rankings that all of a sudden it turned to a big thing, the KenPom rankings, I mean, essentially, even though they're ranked 25th, they're still 47th in that. SLU's the next closest. Earlier, as I said, they're the only other A-10s, 2 10s in there above 100. So you're in the same situation. And I'm gonna keep harping on this, just because it would be nostalgic. It's gonna be nostalgic anyway. If they keep playing like they're playing, it's gonna be. You're gonna be like, hey, we have a chance to actually see some tournament teams in the St. Louis area. Because I guess after you get out of the Missouri Valley Conference, it's essentially the same thing. But it'd be fun to be able to root for the team, to see the atmosphere. And at the time, they wouldn't be thinking this. You wouldn't think that you were going to lose your football team. And that could be part of it too. Like, hey, nobody's going to come and watch us, in the Missouri Valley Conference if the Rams are playing. Which I guess it'd be later than that. So, even then, I just thought about that. I guess maybe fighting for the Blues too. I mean, it's something just to think about. And I'm not really complaining too much about it because it's going to be fun. If they keep on the run they're going on, it's going to be fun to watch anyways. It's more of a nostalgia thing. It would be something for people to talk about. Like, hey, we're going to see SLU have a chance to come win this tournament and get into the big tournament. And hey, they're right there at Scott Trade. And, that's a good tournament. It sells out every year. Blah, blah, blah. Let's go see it. It sells out for teams that... It's a big thing. Arch Madness. Biggest thing ever here. Seems like. Biggest basketball thing here. Sells out all the time. How much more corporate sponsorship and all that you would think that SLU would get if they were part of that tournament? I mean, it's going to help to make it to the NCAA tournament. It helps that your soccer team is off the charts. 3 players drafted in the first round for the soccer team. It helps that your baseball team's good. But that's not the sports that make money. And they might make money at SLU. SLU's not the biggest school in the world. So they might make a little money at SLU. But this town is more of a basketball town than people think. I mean, people just don't come. David Lee's, the Bradley Beals, the Jason Tatum's, don't just come out of nowhere. They came out of St. Louis. So it tells you this is kind of a little bit of a basketball-rich town. Definitely, Chaminade, and CBC. That's just the high school teams. So think how much bigger if you had SLU run around here all year. And they're a decent team, and they're going to have a chance to make the tournament every year. And because the conference you're in now, even if you're the second best team in that thing, in that league, you're not going to make it. It's basically win or go home. And that's what sucks about Mizzou being in the SEC because, man, you got to keep thinking. Definitely if Oklahoma and Texas come in 2025, what's the next time SLU or Mizzou has a real chance to make it to the tournament? So what's the next time? Now you got to look and see what's the next time you're going to actually have tournament basketball even in the area. And it almost makes like the MLB where you could... Do you really want to lose interest because you wanted to be in a better conference? I mean, Mizzou should have been in Mizzou or SLU should have been in the A-10 so much long ago. I guess it would be hard for SLU with no football. I mean, Mizzou, if you're leaving the Big 12 where you've been for forever and have had good teams and had successful runs when it was the Big 8 to when it was the Big 12, why wouldn't your next logistical step be to make your areas better and make your fan base easier spread out when you're going to the Illinois and the Iowas? Which I'm not saying that Alabama and Arkansas and all that ain't that far. Is all that crazy for South Carolina. But teams that the area already kind of has just rivalry with because they're all border states. And now you're making a war on the border states. Because you already lost one by moving. And you can call, whatever the 8 states touch us, you can call them border states. But I'm talking about Illinois. Like your big rivalry. If you're going to take the Kansas one away. Because you're always going to have that bragging rights game. But now it's happening 2 to 3 times a year. In football and basketball. You don't think that's going to bring... That would bring you corporate sponsorships? You don't think that would bring you area recruits? You don't think same thing with SLU with the Missouri Valley. You don't think that people grow up seeing Arch Madness and saying, wow, if I go play for SLU, I'm going to get to play in Arch Madness? And like, now how good SLU is now in a conference where, if you go to SLU, hey, you have a chance to play, but we're not going to say you're going to be on TV a whole bunch or anything, or you're probably not going to make the tournament unless we're halfway decent, because there's only one team out here. So if we don't win our conference, one bad game at a conference tournament, we're trying to apply for the NIT. You would be saying the same thing if you were in the Missouri Valley. So what's even the point of putting yourself in the same position when there's more nostalgia and more, what could be more build-up, what could be more of a fan base from people that are already here that see it, instead of wanting to vote for Mizzou or root for Mizzou because that's a big team you've seen on TV, you've seen maybe had the best chance. But now you're seeing, hey, I knew that guy in high school. Or, you know what I'm saying? I knew the guy, I heard about him in the newspapers in high school. I read about him. I seen him on Channel 2 News. So when you think, so you're bringing a fan base of people that would not even, maybe even normally watch basketball and be like, oh, I want to see my friend play. Instead, you're letting Florida do that. You're letting Kentucky do that. You're letting all these other schools do it. The Duke, all of them. You're losing the easiest gained fan bases. And for no particular reason. I still don't get the sleep move. I understand that. I don't even know if Conference USA is even around anymore. But you moved yourself into the same situation when you went to the A-10. And kind of lost some closer rivalries. With Cincinnati was one of them. I don't know. That's a bad thing. I don't know. I don't make these decisions. That's the problem. Because if I made these decisions, these would all sound so much smarter than me. Because I just want to see SLU and Mizzou in the tournament. I just want to see my team with a chance to win. Like I said earlier about the Blues, probably gonna, we're in that point where it's gonna just be where we lose in the first round of the postseason. Well, at least they got to that point where they have a chance. You don't ever see SLU and Mizzou that anymore. Cardinals, you're like, man, if we just get there, we got a chance. And you don't see that with, a sport that I grew up playing. I grew up loving more than I loved football or more than I loved hockey. And I think not having this around kind of made me lose my interest into where I've gained a lot more respect for hockey than I ever have. I think it's that hockey's what cost me my baseball fandom, or some of my baseball fandom. In a sport that I was so down on, 15 years ago, around the lockout times, that I was just like, we don't need no hockey. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, lock out. And it's kind of good that the Rams left, because that made it a lot too. Like I almost shift 50% of my, maybe more than that of my fandom, 50% of all my fandom to the Blues. And then 45 Cardinals, and I guess 5% college basketball. Well, 4% college basketball, 1% college football. And that's the only bad thing is, like, you could see at the times how good SLU can play. And you're like, oh, man, this could be it. This could be the year. This could be the year. Oh, we lose to UMass. Oh, we had, at the time Auburn wasn't the number one team in the country, but we had that shot to be the SEC, to beat that SEC team. That would have looked good on the RPI and to the committee and all that. So I just want to, I just want that one year where I'm like, you haven't had it a while where we're like, all right, they can win this first round game. All right, so let's see what they can do after this first round game when it gets to that point, just one bad game, and you're into the Sweet 16. So that's all I want. That's all I want. That's all I want. We are going to take a break as I look at the time. That's 40 minutes on basketball. Don't I respect that again? No, I'm just joking. I actually do want to talk some more NBA on this show. College basketball. I do want to get in a little more of some basketball. I do like basketball. Now, NFL, but, college basketball, I do want to get more into it. Come on, SLU, get it together. This has been the Greater we're going to take a break. Be right back. Greater Gstlsp Sportscast, SG4L Media Network. Hello and welcome back to the Greater STL Sports Podcast on the SG4L Media Network. Ryder Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet the show at Gstlsp. You can tweet the network at SG4LMN1. I cut that segment a little short because on the podcast thing, I can only record an hour at a time. I know people are going to say, well, extend it. Well, when I figure that out, we'll all be happy. But you guys need a break anyways, Take a break for a little bit. Come back, listen to the third segment after the little ad or whatever happens. I know it comes all in one show. Blah, blah, blah. And I actually did want to talk a little NFL. And I was actually going to do a little weird news, too. Didn't know I was going to go 40 minutes on basketball. On college basketball at that. I mean, Mizzou did almost beat the number one team in the nation. But I wrote down, a couple stories for weird news, and it's like, maybe I'll throw that in there. If you want to look up a story, just for fun, for weird news, a lady tried to buy a kid at Walmart for $250,000. When she was turned down, she tried to buy the kid for $500,000. On some Nazi stuff, talking about the kid who had brown hair, blue eyes, and he was superior race, and what did she plan on doing with the? Is she gonna make the kid give? I don't. If you have $500,000 to spend, I guess spend it. And then after that, I was just gonna talk football. Great game this weekend. Hate the Rams. Hate the Rams with a passion. You took something from me, and I don't like it. Now, we saved billions and billions of dollars by letting them go. We gained $800 billion from this lawsuit. So I'm not the maddest person in the world. Like, some people are still going crazy about it. We saved the city. You save some money, all this, all that. Life is life. But I'm not too mad that they beat Brady. Not mad at all. Definitely late in the game like that. Just let it go down to the end. Break his heart at the end. Not mad at that at all. Admit Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Maybe the greatest. Hate saying it. Really don't want to say it. Hurts my heart. Makes you want to cry inside. Really does. Just saying that. Just saying that he could be the best quarterback. I'm tearing up a little bit. But it's really cool to see Matthew Stafford get a chance. You know what I'm saying? Guy I really like. Played in Detroit. Gotta be one of the worst franchises ever in the history of football. Couldn't get it done with Barry Sanders. Couldn't get it done with Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson. Had decent other players there. Golden Tate, Brandon Pettigrew. I think Eifert was there for a little bit. But it's cool to see him get there. And I don't dislike anybody in this franchise. I grew up, and I'm not going to say grew up. I was 5 or 6 at the time. But the first NFL teams I can remember liking were the 49ers. The Colts were in there. The 49ers were the first one, Steve Young. One of the first ones, Steve Young. And then, you gotta like the Chiefs, gotta like Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, all that good stuff. And I really do like Josh Allen getting a chance. And I hope the Bills win. I should check that out. We'll check that out on the show. But I don't think I dislike a team. Oh, no, they're playing the Bengals, actually. And Joe Burrow. There we go. How did I came with that without even having to look it up? I'll still look it up just in case I was wrong. But Joe Burrow, cool to see a young cat get in there. Difference. It's always fun to see different. I would love to see a guy like Justin Herbert get it. So it was cool to see a Burrow guy in there. Would have been cool to see Josh Allen get into Buffalo. How I messed that up, I do not know. But I don't even really want to talk about the NFL in all the games. Because I don't really have a rooting interest in the Super Bowl. I guess if I was going to go, I'd go for the Chiefs. But just as long as the Rams don't win. And I wouldn't even feel that bad if the Rams won. We won a Super Bowl here. I guess they deserve one in LA for the Rams. Still mad at myself about the Bengals thing. But, for Matthew Stafford to get it, I mean, they built that team for him to win it this year. Don't know what the hell they're going to do when Ramsey and Von Miller and all these people leave. Odell. Don't know what happened when they're going to do then. But I won't be even that mad at it. But actually wouldn't have had even a bad time talking about it. Even though I hate them sleazeball loser. I'm going to go to LA because St. Louis sucks. There's no corporate sponsorship. Yet we got sponsored for going in stretches of 2 and 40. I think it was 15 and 64. But I'm going to talk about these sleazeball motherfuckers instead. Instead of even talking about the NFL. There's a Los Angeles Times put out an article by Dylan Hernandez, and you can read it yourself. Go look at the Los Angeles Times. I'm not going to go over the whole article. People are taking the article out of hand in the first place. Because, number one, they're saying that he said the Ram fans aren't drawing because of St. Louis, which he never said that. He's saying the Rams aren't drawing fans because they moved to St. Louis in 95. And they lost 2 teams in the Raiders and the Rams at that time. So they're saying that's why LA don't draw fans, essentially. But he basically said that they came back from a dump of a city in St. Louis. Now, that's where you screwed up, old boy. And I'm just going to quote a tweet from Randy Character. On January 1st of 2012, the Rams, 2-13 at the time, in a stretch of 15 and 46, were facing the 49ers in a 67,000 seat stadium for football. In that dome, the worst stadium in the history of life. There's 55,000 people there, almost 56. 55,940. The Rams can't draw 59,940 in their brand new $6 billion stadium in LA for a team that has a chance to go to the Super Bowl. In week 18 of the season, or it might have been 17, doesn't matter. Played the 49ers. Matthew Stafford in his home stadium said he couldn't hear, and the Rams had to move to the silent count because there were so many 49er fans. So many 49er fans that the Rams on Ticketmaster went on there and put, we're not going to sell any tickets to anybody that doesn't have a zip code in the greater LA area. They then had their coach, Sean McVay, who supposedly is not very fond of the owners, and said, hey, if I got a chance to go do broadcasting, I don't need to coach here anymore. And I don't know when that was. I don't know if that's real. It's something his agent put out, blah, blah, blah. I said, hey, when you buy these tickets as the greater LA area, don't sell them. Hee hee. Now, I'm not going to say that there was even 55,000 people in that stadium. I don't believe that there was 55,940 people in that stadium. I don't believe any attendance things that St. Louis ever tells you. St. Louis would tell you that there's 47,000 people every day at Busch Stadium. There's not. There's not 47,000 that can fit in there. But that's how they'll say it. Now, if you remember, towards the end they were talking about, oh, we can't sell out the dome. We're going to have to black out games. Before this, I've never, ever heard of a blackout game, except in Jacksonville. All of a sudden, the Rams, after going 15-46, can't sell out games. All of a sudden, after Stan bought this little property in LA, we're going to have to black out games. You know. Funny, haha. Now you're not having the blackout games in LA. Not even talked about. The problem is the other teams in your stadium. The other team's fans have taken over your stadium, your $6 billion stadium in LA. That's my fault? You moved the team here and then moved them back. Great. LA can have the Rams. That can be LA's team. I'm over it. I'm not over it, but, hey, we saved money. We gained $800 million as a city. Great, do you? You crapped on us on the way out. You got off with it. You had to pay for it. The people that live here aren't the best representatives of asking people if they want to live here. The corporations really don't want to stay. Centene's threatened to leave already because we can't stop crime. We'll get more to that in a second. Now, I don't believe that there was 56,000 in that dome that day. I don't think there was nowhere close to 56,000 people that were Rams fans in that dome that day. But a 2-16 team, at the time 2-13 team, sold 55,000 tickets for that dome. Whether the team bought, 15,000, whatever happened at that time. I didn't hear. I don't know who the quarterback would have been at that time. I don't know if it would have been Bradford. It might have been before the Bradford years. It had to be after the Mark Bolger years. So I don't know, Steve Berline. Who knows? Steve Berline way before that time. Who knows? Who remembers? Trent Green maybe. Who cares? I never heard that quarterback say, hey man, I had to make a silent count in my own stadium because I couldn't hear. Which that dome could get loud at times. With them stupid flaps that hung from the ceiling. Yet, this guy who's mad that the Rams can't draw fans and wrote an article about it in the LA Times for everybody to see. I think you get one free article, so I gave you a free article to read. There's your free article for one of LA Times this week. I think it's $1 for 6 months or something like that. $1 a month for 6. I'm not getting into all that nonsense. Paper business, do what you gotta do to survive, get it, do you. So, misreading as much as I did on the Post-Dispatch, I'll find it. But your owner already crapped on us on the way out. So you're going to write an article, Mr. Hernandez. just to try to crap on us more. The problem is you literally have news articles on every site that are showing trash up and down the LA train tracks. So people robbing the trains, dumping out COVID tests, people's packages from Amazon. I'm talking about COVID tests. These things that we're looking for are over the ground in LA. You need a COVID test, go down these train tracks. You probably find you one. I didn't see no article about St. Louis. No, I have seen articles about St. Louis and the homeless problem. I never heard of one say, World Series or not, like, hey, we're going to have to clean up this homeless problem in front of our stadium so we can host the Super Bowl here. So, let's drain in this. I feel like I'm a lawyer all of a sudden. What makes LA any different than St. Louis other than how many people are there? And the weather. There's just more to do. Right? You still have the homeless problem. You still have the crime problem. You might not have the murder rate. Different size capita. No, they have everything they can do down there, the nightlife and all that. Who wants to go to a football game? A football game I can easily watch TV and wherever place I'm going to go. St. Louis doesn't have all that. So we're dumping the city for that? Because we didn't make your football team a dump. I'm pretty sure in 4 years, I guess into the 5th year that they were here, pretty sure we had a Super Bowl. I'm pretty sure by our 6th to 7th year here, we were in another one that we had a chance to win. Now I'm so happy that your city gets to host these wonderful Super Bowls and all that. But you're telling me that a team that's been a winning team for the last, 3-4 years, that had a chance to go to a Super Bowl a couple years ago, you're saying that they still can't draw fans? And that's my fault again? And my city has to be crappy because your football team and your owner's a sleazeball? The NFL's sleazeballs? And there's better things to do in LA than go watch a sleazeballs team? That's my fault again? It's my fault that everybody would rather do something else? Because I don't hear the Dodgers complaining about this. I don't hear the Kings complaining about it. I don't hear the Lakers complaining about it. I haven't heard the Chargers say too much about it. I've heard your locker room suck for the visiting teams. People don't know how a stone or an enclosed stadium has weather delays. I've heard that. I haven't heard too much of them complaining about that they can't get fans. And the Lakers haven't been that good. The Kings were good in the 2010s, but the Kings haven't been that good. And it's not like the Lakers are all this big sensation this year. You got something going on with the Dodgers, so I guess it's easy to draw in the middle of the summer, but I mean, is it like 30 degrees in LA right now? I don't think so. Is there like blizzards going on in LA where people can't get to the stadium? Because I'm pretty sure a couple years ago in St. Louis, people in a playoff game got to the Scott Trade Center down there for the Blues game. I didn't hear about any snow in LA anytime recently. So I'm trying to think about what's the barricade from blocking your team to come from your fans in LA that should love this LA football team because it's LA's team more than the Raiders, more than any other football team that's ever been there. What's the impendage? What's stopping them? I mean, there was no reason to even throw us in there. You weren't talking about us. You weren't talking about what St. Louis did to your football team, because we did nothing. We made your team relevant again. The Rams weren't relevant. Nobody wanted the Rams until the Rams won a Super Bowl. I didn't hear too many people crying when the Rams left the first time. I really didn't hear too many people clamoring for him to come back. Because obviously there wasn't too much clamoring from anybody in power, because Stan Kroenke bought the land and then put the stadium on it himself. So it's not like that the mayor was out there saying, hey, we got you, boys. If you read our lease, the reason that the Rams left St. Louis, we put a lot of jack in the Rams, as Stan Kroenke once said about St. Louis. He said I put a lot of jack into Missouri or St. Louis or whatever. Said we put a lot of jack into the Rams to get the Rams here because you couldn't take care of them, and you're not doing a very good job of it now. You got a $6 billion stadium that nobody in LA wants to go to. People are coming from San Francisco. And this isn't the first time it's happened. I think more Chargers came to, was supposed to be a Rams game. I think that was a time that it happened. I didn't hear about that too much in St. Louis. And you can tell, in this Dylan guy, smart guy, happy as shit, never put his name on the article or anything. Now he's got everybody in our region talking about it. Not going after anybody, letting everybody say what they want about him. Responded to one person, Derek Gould, after he said something. Danny Mack put a great series of tweets out there if you want to read about how he feels about St. Louis. But he responded to Derek Gould, hey, would love to eat with you at any time, Derek. Anywhere, any day, even in St. Louis. Nothing bad about St. Louis. Nothing going after Derek Gould. Just, hey, everybody's reading an article, look at me. Smart guy. For an article that wasn't even about St. Louis in the most part. It was mostly about the NFL leaving St. Louis, or leaving LA, and the LA fans being a little butthurt about it still. I guess understandable. You didn't have a team for 20 years. You watched your team win a Super Bowl in St. Louis 5 years into it. Thinking the same thing that I'm probably thinking now, like, wow, if they would have done this when they were here, they would have got Marshall Faulk, which they had Jerome Bettis. You didn't know what Kurt Warner was going to be. You had Isaac Bruce. And you didn't know what Torrey Holt was going to be. But they were probably thinking, whoa, but if they did this in LA, I would have went and watched the game. I would have been more into my team. Man, this would have made a big difference here. Same thing I was thinking. I'm thinking now. Like, man, what if we would have got Stafford when Gurley was at his prime? Or we would have got a couple more. Aaron Donald grown to his prime in St. Louis. What if they would have went out and got some of these players that, want to go out here and win a Super Bowl? What if they would have done that in St. Louis? Would it be a whole different story? And that's not even guaranteed because of that stupid lease we signed. We could have won a Super Bowl in 2015 and they still could have left. And should have. They're right. They moved their property valuation up $2 billion. And they only ended up paying $800 million for that move. So essentially you made just by moving your team at the time you made $1.2 billion. And who knows how much money that's turned into now. Sounds like I'm being like a Rams apologist or something. But whatever they did, they were well in their right. Now, what they weren't in their right to do was act like it was St. Louis's fault when they didn't put no money into the team, didn't try to help the team win And it is said, oh, it's because we don't have corporate sponsorship and all that. There's too much meat in the market already with the Blues and the Cardinals, and we're not getting none. Which is totally untrue. 2 different seasons. The only thing you've been fighting with is the Blues, essentially. And you're only playing on 16 nights a year. I'm pretty sure there's some people out there that would be like, hey, man, I can only see this 8 nights a year in St. Louis. So, I'm pretty sure there's some people out there that are going to say, hey, man, we could get these Rams tickets for the next weekend. We could probably skip this Blues game. I'm sure there's people that are more into football than they are hockey in the first place. Definitely a lot more people. I would say just even 5 to 6 years ago. And I wouldn't even say that long ago. I'd maybe go 2 to 3 years and say that even after the Rams left, that more people in St. Louis were more into football than they were into the Blues. I think it was I think it was a big shift. I think it was even a bigger shift in 2019 winning the Stanley Cup. And I think even before that, going on the run they're on. I don't think that the casual sports fan was watching, in St. Louis was watching the Blues until really February or March of 2020. Or 2019. Might be right with 2020. Am right with 2020. Anyways, when the Blues went on that big run in the playoffs, and I think that a lot of the people didn't even make it till after even the first round of the playoffs. And I don't know if the Rams saw it. I don't know if they thought that maybe like the St. Louis fans were going to follow them. Like, we're not spiteful people. Like, as a sports fandom city, we're not as crazy as Philadelphia, but we're up there. Look, when you burn a hole in our saddle, we hold that grudge for a while. And that's because that's one of the biggest things in St. Louis. It's a Midwest city. You kind of take all the way the fun in the winter with the snow and all that. But in the summertime, for a long time, it's been the Cardinals. See, we're in a big city and a whole thing of smaller markets, except for Chicago, of course. Which is, at one time, you thought, well, maybe we were similar, we were siblings, and now we're more like the redheaded stepchild to Chicago. And it sucks that a once prominent city, one of the cities that people talked about all the time, it turned into, with a little bit of the reading that you do, that someone can even go in the LA Times and call us a dump of the city. Now that's on us. That's the one thing he has on us. That not that he has the right to go in the paper, but that from just a little bit that he's got, that's what he can call St. Louis. That's our fault. And that's not my fault, and that's not your fault, but that's the people we elected fault, and part of that's our fault. It's not 50-50, though. 75-25, because it's the people we elected. But really, Sam Page, Laura Cruson, Deshauna Jones, and there's a list that goes on and on. This article should have them look in a mirror and say, hey, we put ourselves in the position for this guy to call us that just from this little bit that he knows. Because we're not a dump of a city. There's a lot worse cities off than us. There's parts of Chicago that are worse off than us. We just lost a little bit of our luster. Starting to get it back. Ballpark Village, you figure would have been a little bit bigger start to that. You figure it would start opening up the downtown. But the market's also shrinking too. You can only have so much. I mean, Union Station doing what they did, I think that helps revitalizing, turning Union Station into an entertainment place and kind of an attraction of something to go to with the Ferris wheel and all that. But you got the Magic House, you got the City Museum, you got, which I guess you could call a dump. But the zoo. I mean, you got a lot of things in St. Louis that you can go do. There's not every place has that kind of stuff. I mean, the Del Mar Loop is not a bad place to go at the right time. So we're not a dump of a city at all. Hard for me to even fathom anybody to think that. But there's a reason he thought that. And that's on us. So that's our fault. Everything else around the whole thing that he based it off of had nothing to do with us. It's just somebody getting clickbait, making a fluffer piece, something like, ah! This is what he wanted. So, how can we be mad at him? No. That's the reason we should be mad at him. Because he got what he wanted out of it. Now, well, we should be mad at him because you lose. Tell me what you know about St. Louis. Tell me why you call us a dump. Did he expound on that? Not at all. Give me differences. If you want to be a real reporter, newspaper writer, if you're going to report this as some kind of fact, tell me why it's fact. Tell me. Because you can't. It's what you heard. You know what I've heard about LA? It's a dump. Have I been there to say it? No. Am I going to say it? No. It probably is way better than St. Louis. More money, probably. As we know. More people. More entertainment. Cost Stan Kroenke for $6 billion out of it. I guess 607 billion or seven. I was gonna say 608 billion, but 7 billion out of it to build up a city that don't even want you there. So, what took 6 years to notice this? What took you 6 years as a reporter to notice this? What took you 6 years as a supposed journalist to notice this? Tell me. You told me nothing. You just said, oh, it sucks that we can't sell out the SoFi Stadium. Doesn't suck for me. I think it's some of the funniest things I ever read in my life. I think it's funny that that loser rat-looking crackhead piece of toupee wearing did all this to not sell out that stadium. To have the Chargers more beloved than the Rams when the Rams have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. That's your fault. Why didn't you keep liking the Rams? Why did it have to stop? You're mad you were sour. They took your team 20 years ago. And you're acting like I'm supposed to get over it because they were LA's team. Well, they were my team for 20 years. I watched Rams games religiously. I went to Rams games. I got familiar with the players. Not in a personal level, but, learned who they are. Learned everybody's name. All that. No, it was fun going through Madden and clicking on St. Louis. You took that away from me. You took some of that entertainment away from me. Even though I'll still throw on the Madden here and there. So, what was the difference what we did to you that you did to us. We just did it to you earlier because you couldn't keep your team then. And we call that loser. That's what we call LA. The loser. That big L they got in Chicago should be swinging around SoFi right now. Someone should go buy one from Wrigley and go put it on SoFi. Because that's what your football whole fan base is. With your owner and your little CEO, little weasel demo. If we're a dump, y'all are losers. That's pretty much where it's at. You lost the football team again. You lost the first football team the first time, and now you're so lost you can't even put fans in it. That's a big of a loser. That's how lost and out of touch that this thing Kroenke was in the first place, because he's a loser. Because he needed the satisfaction by saying, I'm Mr. LA. You know, Kevin Didoff needed the satisfaction to say, me and Stan moved the team to LA. They needed that satisfaction. This guy needed the satisfaction in this article to put in there that St. Louis was a dump. That made him feel better about writing this article of why they won't come. Fans won't come. I don't need to make myself feel better that way. Me calling the whole situation and everybody involved in it losers, that doesn't make me feel good about myself. You did this to yourselves. And this started in the 90s. We had the better deal. With a crappier stadium. With a stadium that was out of date back then. And they still came here. And with a 15-46 record for like 5 seasons, we're still a better team here than they were in LA. So all these wonderful things that Stan Kroenke and Jerry Jones did for all y'all, that they thought they did for all y'all, that you thought that they did for all y'all, they did it for themselves. And they got nothing out of it, which is great. But it's your fault that this is what's happening. That you like the Rams and you can't stand this. So you need to ask Kroenke. You need to talk to Kroenke. You need to put Kroenke in your article and figure out, be a journalist. Figure out why Kroenke, what he thought from the beginning. Because just to put a little something in there about St. Louis, just to make your article seem like it was somewhat legit, made it the opposite of that. Made it kind of a laughing stock. People took it way too far. I took it a little far. But it was a have fun with it. And it's so, like, it worked out so good for him. Like, people, like, I say stupid stuff to people that say stupid stuff on Twitter all the time. They have, like, so many actions and all that. You know, they send them to your Twitter analyst and all that. Had 0 on this tweet. 0. Like the other tweets I put. So he's in clickbait without even half the time. And probably not even reading this stuff. Just knowing that people are clicking on his article. Probably sees his notifications that says, nice. Now I don't, and that probably gained that newspaper probably, I would guess, a few hundred, because if you scroll like through Google News or something, you hit a LA Toys story time, you know, an LA Times story, you know, that's your one a week. So you're like, damn, I go back to, I can't read this article everybody's talking about. F it, I'll pay this little $1 that I probably won't cancel, that I'll forget to cancel. And now they're going to get this money and money till I figure out when they take out like probably a $20 bill out of 1 month, and I'm like, what did I just spend $20 on? And it's this LA Times because you want to read this one article. Worked out for everybody. Most likely why the editors let it happen. Not that the LA Times are too smart or smarter people. They got Bill Pulaski and Sam Farmer there, and the worst of the worst. Bill Pulaski absolutely hates St. Louis for no reason. I understand the Kansas City thing a little bit. We think we're Big Brother. They think that they're Big Brother. Understandable. Chicago, a little bit, the bigger city, we're still the bullies. Why would LA hate us? Doesn't make any sense at all. Over the football team that they have, you're mad. What, you're still mad? Because we as a city didn't ruin the football team. The owner that they're now dead. We as a city didn't take football from you. You want to know who was on that ownership group that got one of the reasons the Rams got to St. Louis? It's the owner you got now. He had to throw some money in there to help out the Frontiers to get here, or the deal was going to fall through. And that's probably what people don't even look into. Like, if you're going to do the research, you should have looked into all this and figured out, man, this dude's been a real sleazeball for a long time. He took our team away just to bring him back? What? What? And that's where I'm at with this. I don't get why this. I don't even know if to call him a Rams fan. I think he was just writing an article because he had nothing else to write about. I'm really starting to think so. I can't think of even remotely even wanting to come out with this. Definitely the time. So you made St. Louis sound sleazeball, and you only had to say one sentence, and great. We're not the best city in the world. But don't you kind of think that kind of made your fans sound like sleazeballs? These fans that you're trying to promote to not sell their tickets off. And yet one of the guys in the LA newspaper just wrote an article about it. That whether you delete it now or not, after Stan Kroenke listens to this podcast and say, hey, that guy might be right. So everybody's then wrote this article that particularly pertains to that the only sentence that they want to put in their memory box is that you called St. Louis a dump of a city in St. Louis. But shouldn't LA Rams fans read that and say, well, he's kind of taking a dump on us too. And these are the people that want us to watch this team and not sell our tickets off? They don't want us to make a couple $1,000 off tickets, but they act like we're crappy fans? Well, I can watch this stuff on Fox. Let me get that couple hundred. And I thought I was going to come out here and let's railroad this dude. Crappy journalism, crappy writing, just crappy everything. Horrible article. Dumb as can be. Got him what he wanted. Got his name out there. But if you sit there and read the article, and I think people should probably look a little more into that, he kind of crapped all over the city of LA. Well, that's the Los Angeles Rams fan base. Nothing in there about the Chargers fan base and how horrible they are. Mention the Raiders, nothing about their fan base when they were in LA. But this Rams fan base can't even get into the stadium. Makes no sense. But now it looks like the big thing is St. Louis because he said one sentence. And this takes the focus off all that. To where it's probably an afterthought to everybody. Everybody that's read this article, the afterthought is that he's crapping on LA Rams fans. Which is just the greatest thing to me. Call my city a dump, but you didn't call me a shitty fan. But you sure did call your own, the fans that you want to go to this game. You sure did, call what I would guess essentially would be your peers. You called your peers pretty crappy. Because I'm pretty sure even though it's probably not a real number, I'm pretty sure I'm here 3 million went to Busch Stadium this year. I can tell you one thing about 70,000 San Francisco 49ers fans went to your stadium. I'm not going to say that, let's just say a good number. Let's just say 500,000 are even going to be outsider fans. And the Cardinals, we didn't get mentioned about them fan bases. He really didn't mention our fan base. He mentioned his. He mentioned the Rams. So you got to think somewhere in there this is going to backfire on, wouldn't you think? And that's the whole funny thing about it. So call my city a dump, but you called the Rams fans you dumped on them. So which ones do I think worse? Well, automatically I go to LA Rams fans. My city doesn't look like so much of a dump after all. So I'm cool with it. And, when everybody in the world, sells their ticket, and you can go write an article about our city's a dump and how LA Rams fans didn't show up to the conference championship game. That everybody in the world, instead of driving 10, 15 minutes, drove the 30-minute, probably an hour drive, which would usually be a 30-minute drive from San Francisco to LA. And I guess just write about that. Just didn't tell me it's all my fault. Oh, okay. I'm going to shrug this right off. Because I know what you said last week about your own city. At a time you wrote this article, your team has a chance to go to a Super Bowl. That wasn't talked about. The fan base was talked about. And one sentence about my little funky city. So if that's all you have to talk about, I feel bad for you. Because I spent like 45 minutes talking about Blues defense. I spent another 40 minutes talking about college basketball. Which, UCLA, USC, doesn't he have something else to talk about? He wants to talk about St. Louis? Thank you. Because I sure wasn't thinking about LA today. Or yesterday. Or the day before. So I'll go ahead and live rent-free right where I want to be. Not really, but hey, it's rent-free. Be right in your head. That's how bad it is. We got to him. St. Louis got to that, man, they're always talking about how great of a fan base they are. There's too many San Francisco people in ours. Dump of a city. Ugh. Sounds like a little kid almost. I'm so mad about the Rams and their fan base in LA. That stupid dump of a city in St. Louis. Ain't that kind of what it sounds like? You had no reason to back it up. You had no way to back it up. You could have gave me something. I would at least read it. You couldn't even do that. You went back into whatever. I'm so heartbroken over 1994. Now you sound like a girl. You sound like a little, hey, I'm so heartbroken. You sound like a teenage girl. That stupid dump of a city heartbroke me 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? That's what it sounds like. So go ahead. I'll live rent free. You go ahead. You call me my dump of a city. I'll watch San Francisco. Go ahead and rout the Rams with a bunch of fans in the stadium. Be nice to hear some cheers at the end of the game for the Rams when they lose. The Rams probably ain't used to that. They're used to losing. They're used to being losers. I shouldn't say that because they were in St. Louis. But that's not our fault. I didn't build that team. We shut up games enough to where I didn't hear no complaining until they wanted to move. Then it was some blackout. The reason he ain't getting blacked out is LA because everybody from San Francisco's coming. So, let it keep happening. We'll wait till March and we won't hear about the Rams no more, and we'll be playing baseball and having $3 million, and they can come next year and blame the Rams being crappy on us. So that's gonna do it for my Grandma Hicks. Love you, Grandma. For Lori, Paul, and Grandma Bowlesby. R.I.P. for Maddie, Zach, Jake, Joe, and Little Rhiannon. This has been the STL Sports Podcast on SG4L Media Network.